Hello and welcome back to my channel. We have a lot to get into today, so blah, 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 blah. Let's just get to it. Today we are talking motions. Motions. So yes, Jennifer Abel and the Wayfarer parties have responded to Stephanie motherfucking Jones. We're going to go through those motions and then also Jed Wallace's reply to Blake Lively. And also, this just in as of last night, Judge Lehman's decision on Stephanie Jones so far. Okay, so if you're ready, I'm ready. Today we are just going through all the legal stuff. We're going to talk about all of the filings and we're going to get right into it. So you're in frame with Mandy Magnan. I'm going to do something a little bit different today and get to the replies first because I'm really interested to see what y'all think about these replies before we actually get into the motion. And we'll just see, because starting with these replies, I feel like just opens your eyes to what is going on inside of their minds on the Stephanie Jones camp. But this was the reply coming from both parties, the Wayfarer parties as well as the Stephanie Jones camp, about these new motions filed. So we'll just get into them very quickly. We'll go over the replies right now. Like the Wayfarer parties, all of us, at least me, in my opinion, we do blame Stephanie Jones for starting and triggering this whole Baldoni and Blake drama. Justin Baldoni's attorney, Brian Freeman, just filed an amended set of counterclaims, which we're going to get into, pushing back after Jones' lawyers went on Extra to talk to Billy Bush about her side of the dueling lawsuits. Brian Freeman, the Wayfarer lawyers, also blasted Jones in a statement to TMZ, telling us, in light of new evidence being uncovered almost daily, it has become imperative to amend our counterclaims against Stephanie Jones and Jones Works. We are not surprised at all that Ms. Jones would instruct her legal team to go on record and mischaracterize the circumstances surrounding the sham subpoena and Van Zandt lawsuit, so impressively uncovered by the passionate group of online sleuths. Justin's lawyers continues, a cursory reading of the Van Sham lawsuit, I love that, Van Sham lawsuit, makes clear that the Lively parties have been caught engaging in their own smear campaign, intentionally circumventing the normal procedures for clearly improper purposes by creating a farcical complaint with an unrelated plaintiff and no named defendants, ensuring that no one would know about or object to their attempt to obtain information they were not entitled to. Freeman adds, to suggest, as Van Zandt, Lively, and Reynolds do in their secret complaint, that they were unaware to the identities of their own employees and contractual counterparties is a complete joke. We are just starting to scratch the surface of a much broader and more insidious scheme. Brian Freeman goes on to say, to be clear, Jones and Jones Works are equally implicated in this misconduct. We reiterate once again, there is not and has never been a smear campaign, except for the one being waged by the Lively parties and Miss Jones in collaboration with the New York Times. He concludes, we will continue to fight to expose and hold accountable the wrongdoers and uncover the truth. Well, Stephanie Jones's attorneys, two of them had some things to say. Maran Shah tells TMZ, this case will be decided on the mountain of evidence that demonstrates Wayfarer Studios and Ms. Abel deliberately breached their contracts with Jones Works, which the defendants have conspicuously failed to rebut. She continued, the defendants' weak attempt to assemble their own case against Miss Jones amounts to nothing more than a few debunked conspiracy theories and media gimmicks that have no basis in facts or evidence. The indisputable fact remains the defendants have yet to provide any substantive defense to Ms. Jones's case. Everything else is just distraction and noise. Stephanie's other lawyer then chimes in, Kristen Thaler, She says, reversing course, dropping previously touted claims, presenting zero new evidence, and putting out the world's longest and most confusing statement. What a desperate ploy by a team who tonight all but admits they're in trouble. Behind their empty gusto, you'll find out even an attempt to defend the misdeeds laid bare by the evidence quite telling. So basically what I get from those statements is, yes, maybe because Wayfarer went with Jennifer Abel and they had a contract and maybe they didn't give notice or something, like maybe she is right that they did break the contract with her and owe her a month, 2 months, whatever, 6 months of her fee, whatever her contract says. They're completely bypassing and skipping past the most fundamental thing about this case, which is illegally or unethically turning over Jennifer Abel's phones, wiretapping, spying on her employees, and just doing the most unethical things to get to where we are today, and to have provided the lively parties with the information that they got with the cherry-picked text messages and all of the texts that they think somehow prove a smear campaign, which we've yet to see any proof of a smear campaign. So they're just so focused on making us believe that the Wayfarer parties and Jennifer Abel broke their contract to Jones Works, but yet have never said anything about the actual claims. To me, it's just so boggling. But what we're going to do right now is just read the amended complaints against Stephanie Jones. From first, we're going to start with Jennifer Abel, and then we're going to do the Wayfarer ones because there's a lot of the same. I don't know what this is, but yin yang, I guess. There's a lot of the same in both. And if you think you know everything about Jen Abel's claim, boy, oh boy, because I've already done like full video timelines of the entire PR mess of It Ends With Us and everything to do with the crisis managers, Leslie Sloan, Jennifer Abel, and Stephanie Jones. And I thought I knew everything, but there is more going on, girl. They found out way more. And what I think is very obvious is now they have witnesses, because some of the wording, which we'll get into, I think either people from the Lively camp or Stephanie Jones, like an ex-employee or someone that was around during this time, have been speaking to the Wayfarer parties, because it sounds like they know for sure that some shady stuff was going on. So sorry, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather today, but we're going to push through. We're going to get there, So let's right now get into Jennifer Abel and Stephanie Jones. In this new motion, it is just from Jennifer Abel. It's her amended answer to the complaint. So we're just going to jump all the way into the meat of it, because basically at first they're just answering back to all of Stephanie Jones's complaints, and it just says like pretty much a lot of the stuff they can't answer because they lack knowledge or information. They can't answer. So it's a lot of that for the first 20 pages. And then they go into all of their defenses and their defense in this state. And they have 31 defenses. And then their prayer for relief when it comes to this, where for defendant Jennifer Abel prays for relief as follows. Number 1, that the complaint be dismissed with prejudice and plaintiffs take nothing herein. 2, that judgment be entered in favor of defendant and against plaintiffs. 3, for cost of suit incurred in this action. And 4, for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Demand for jury trial. Demand for jury trial. Now, what I think is very interesting here is when it comes to the Lively parties, every one of them now has filed to get dismissed. They started it, they did the crime, and they're not willing to pay the price. So now we have Blake Lively trying to get dismissed, Ryan Reynolds trying to get dismissed, Stephanie Jones trying to get dismissed, and now Leslie Sloan, as of last night, just put in a letter to try to get dismissed. All of the parties want nothing to do with it, as well as Marvel has put in a motion now to be dismissed and not have to answer the subpoena or turn over any records. So all of them are trying to get dismissed. Meanwhile, the Wayfarer parties, every single party in the Wayfarer parties has demanded for a jury trial. That should be telling enough. I'm going to just say that there exists, and at all times here mentioned, there existed a unity of interest between Jones Works and Jones, such that any individuality and separateness has ceased, and Jones Works is the alter ego of Jones. At all relevant times herein, each of Jones and Jones Works was the agent, servant, employee, employer, joint venturer, partner, and or alter ego of the other, and was at all times operating and acting within the purpose and scope of said agency, service, employment, joint venture, partnership, and or alter ego. Each of Jones and Jones Works has rendered substantial assistance and encouragement to the other, acting in concert, knowing that its conduct was wrongful and or unlawful, and each of Jones and Jones Works has ratified and approved the acts of the other. General allegations, long known within the public relations industry for her disarming Southern twang, brass-knuckle tactics, and high turnover of clients and employees, Stephanie Jones has had a successful career in the entertainment industry. Then they go on to mention some of her clients, including Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez, Venus Williams, Tom Brady, and Chris Hemsworth. Jones is married to Jason Hodes, a partner at WME. WME is who used to represent Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer and still represent Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Jones is married to Jason Hodes, a partner at WME, Hollywood's most powerful talent agency. Between her perch atop Jones Works and his partnership at WME, Jones and Hodes are a bona fide Hollywood power couple. When Jones poached Jennifer Abel was an up-and-coming star publicist at RNCPMK, a storied 7-year-old public relations arm of Interpol Group, a 53,000 employee, publicly traded multinational marketing behemoth. At the time of her departure from RNCPMK, Abel had worked there for nearly 12 years and held the title of vice president. In or around late spring of 2020, Jones offered her a higher salary and, critically, the opportunity to lead her own team. When Abel announced her intention to join Jones Works, she was met with a parade of concern from across her professional network. An array of well-respected public relations professionals from across the entertainment industry reached out to Abel to caution her against working for Stephanie Jones. Jones, they warned, had a well-deserved reputation for treating people horribly. Jones had recently become embroiled in a dispute with another public relations firm for stealing its clients using deceptive and unscrupulous means. So I know for sure that Stephanie Jones reading this is going to be so mad, like so irritated, because again, they're just dragging her, and she's been getting dragged for so long. I mean, we'll get into it, but there's websites and Reddits and, a whole article in the Business Insider about her, On or about July 9th, 2020, Abel was hired by Jones Works as vice president. In connection with, as a condition of her employment, Abel signed a non-disclosure and intellectual property rights and non-solicitation agreement, the 2020 Employment Act. Abel was not represented by counsel in connection with the negotiation or execution of the 2020 Employment Agreement. The 2020 Employment Agreement provided that Abel was an at-will employee whose employment was exclusive to Jones' work during the period of her employment. It also contained a confidentiality clause pursuant to which Abel was required to maintain the confidentiality of and not disclose confidential information, as the term is expansively defined therein. Provisions perpetrating to restrict Abel's ability to speak truthfully about her experiences at Jones Works, and a host of restrictive covenants, including non-competition and non-solicitation covenants. The 2020 employment agreement also contained a California choice of law provision providing that it had been made and shall be interpreted in accordance with the laws of the state of California without regard to the conflicts of law principles. Within a few weeks of Abel's onboarding, JonesWorks faced a mass exodus of employees in the New York office. While Abel was understandably concerned, Jones assured her that all of the departing employees were horrible at their jobs and were going to be fired regardless. Little did Abel know then that the turnover of that magnitude was typical at JonesWorks, which routinely faced large-scale departures by disgruntled and demoralized employees. What Abel did quickly realize is that the morale amongst JonesWorks employees was outright abysmal, that such departures were invariably acrimonious, and that departing employees and current employees alike were extremely tight-lipped and fearful of engaging in any sort of discussion about their experience at JonesWorks. Abel observed that morale among JonesWorks employees was inversely correlated with physical proximity to Jones. Thus, the Los Angeles office was generally a more positive environment than the New York office. Abel was also surprised to learn that in spite of its size, JonesWorks lacked any sort of human rights department or dedicated human resources personnel. Jones instead relied on business affair personnel and her various chiefs of staff to handle any personal related matters. JonesWorks had a toxic workplace culture in which employees lacking an outlet of meaningful resource constantly gossiped and complained amongst themselves and leaned on senior employees for solutions to workplace issues. Oh, I hate toxic workplace. Oh gosh, the PTSD. Unlike most workplaces, JonesWorks also lacked written internal policies, including regarding the usage of electronic devices or an employee handbook. At no point during Abel's employment did she see, hear about, or sign anything of the sort. The only terms governing Abel's employment were those set forth in her employment agreements. While Abel had an Android, Jones offered to switch her to a JonesWorks issued iPhone, which required that she port her existing long-time phone number to the JonesWorks company phone plan. Abel had no problem with this, so long as she could retain ownership of her phone number and bring it with her should she leave JonesWorks. Although JonesWorks owned the physical device, it was configured with Abel's personal Apple ID and populated with all of her personal email accounts, photos, text message, third-party apps, etc. So what she's saying is when she started there with her own phone, she had an Android, and since the entire office of JonesWorks uses iPhones, she switched over to the iPhone as per Stephanie Jones's request. She also states that this is a common practice because to use your personal phone with your business phone, I guess in this field, it's very normal to do that. I know a lot of people who have two separate phones, so I guess they're just trying to say, hey, a lot of people do this. It's actually the internal policies and practices, and that it was fine for her to do this, I guess. Abel had no reason whatsoever to believe that JonesWorks' ownership of the physical device would or could in any way compromise her right to privacy in the personal data or accounts stored on it or accessible from it. JonesWorks would not have any right to access or monitor, for example, her personal email accounts, text messages, photos, or bank accounts. Notwithstanding the continued large-scale departure from the JonesWorks New York office, Abel quickly became a leader of the California operation. Within 2 years, Abel had grown the Los Angeles headcount from her 4 employees to 12. All the while, Abel wore an array of hats, working tirelessly without commensurate increase of compensation. More work, same money. Ugh. I hate that. On or about November 22nd, 2021, so now it's like almost a year in, JonesWorks required Abel to enter into a modified employee agreement, the 2021 employment agreement, changing her employment from at will to a contractual term, adjusting her title and compensation, and subjecting her to a variety of novel restrictions intended to deter her from leaving JonesWorks and inhibiting inhabiting, oh my gosh, and inhabiting her ability to remain in her chosen field if she were to do so. I don't know if I should keep that in there. Maybe I will, just so you guys can see what I'm going through. No, and subjecting her to a variety of novel restrictions intended to deter her from leaving JonesWorks and inhabiting her, I did it again, and inhabiting her ability to remain in her chosen field if she were to do so. Abel was not represented by counsel. The 2021 employment agreement, like its The 2021 employment agreement, like its predecessor, contained an expansively drafted confidentiality provision as well as a host of restrictive covenants, including non-competition and non-solicitation covenants. Unlike the 2020 employment agreement, the 2021 employment agreement contained a New York choice of law provision providing as follows. This agreement and the performance of the parties' obligations hereunder will be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of New York, without giving effect to any choice of law principles. At all times during Abel's employment at JonesWorks, Abel was a resident of the County of Los Angeles, state of California, was based out of JonesWorks' Los Angeles office, and performed the overwhelming majority of her work within the state of California. Because remember in Stephanie Jones' first thing, she was saying, oh, well, it's supposed to be New York, da-da-da-da-da. Apart from infrequent business travel, Abel performed no work for JonesWorks in the state of New York. It is clear that JonesWorks required Abel to agree to a New York choice of law provision because it wanted the ability to bind her to restrictive covenants such as non-competition and non-solicitation covenants that would be void ab initio in California, and to deprive Abel of the protections of California's substantive law. By Abel's second year, Jones appeared to be deteriorating. Abel began to harbor increasing concerns about Jones's mental stability and ability to manage client and employee relations. At around this time, Jones started making FaceTime calls to Abel and other employees at notably odd hours. Jones' communications frequently tracked through the night and into the next morning, suggesting that she had not been sleeping at all. Concurrently and likely relatedly, Jones became noticeably more paranoid and irascible, often accusing Abel and others of plotting against her. It became more difficult to communicate with Jones, settle her nerves, or even track her train of thought. If y'all have ever been around people that you have to like walk on eggshells with, or always soothe them, or always make sure that they don't like blow up, it can be so toxic. And in the workplace, there is like no place for it. Like, I hate working with big egos like this. It's super traumatizing. Okay, it is super traumatizing. In May of 2024, there was reports coming out that Sanchez and Johnson had dropped Jones as their publicist. She definitely wanted to keep that under the wraps and was trying to have like extreme NDA signed by her employees. While these were among the most prominent and publicly reported departures, a cascade of JonesWorks clients began to cut ties with Jones, especially after word had spread that Business Insider was contacting Jones's former and current clients and employees concerning a forthcoming article about her sordid behavior. On May 8th, 2024, so now we are into the editing of It Ends With Us, just so we're on the same timeline. So the editing of It Ends With Us, and Wayfarer is going through it right now with Blake Lively. Also, Stephanie Jones is now going through it on her own end. This is very important that, you know, why everything kind of explodes, I feel, in my opinion. On May 8th, 2024, a website called Stephanie Jones Leaks went live, along with an X.com account, a Facebook page, a Reddit account, and a Pinterest page. Dang. These platforms disclosed a litany of highly disturbing allegations about Jones's behavior and business practices, many concerning Jones's mistreatment of JonesWorks employees and clients. Abel had no involvement of any kind in Stephanie Jones Leaks. These revelations caused a firestorm in Hollywood, resulting in a surge of negative publicity regarding Jones, including the publication of the Business Insider piece entitled "Who's Afraid of Stephanie Jones?" The Business Insider piece shed more light on the real Jones, always a volatile personality. Jones had become noticeably more paranoid, erratic, and cruel in recent years. The Business Insider story also shed light on the toxic workplace Jones had fostered at JonesWorks. At the office, Jones would regularly turn on deafening music to show she could berate her employees free from scrutiny. "I don't think there was one day in the office that someone wasn't crying," said a former employee. Jones also pried into her employees' private lives without invitation. As detailed by Business Insider, when employees called in sick, Jones would FaceTime them to confirm they were actually sick. I did read this. I have read the Business Insider. That's where I got the first picture from. And yeah, there is an employee there that said that they called due to a death in the family and they had to go to the funeral. And Jones FaceTimed them directly to make sure that they were actually at the funeral. Wild. As discussed above, but disclosed publicly by Business Insider, turnover rates at JonesWorks were extraordinary. Jones seldom allowed them to go amicably, often enlisting attorneys to threaten and intimidate them into agreeing not to disparage Jones. In April 2023, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson dropped JonesWorks after clashes between Jones and Johnson's team. This was a big loss for Jones and one that she kept under wraps from media in order to leverage opportunities for other clients. In the following months, Jones was also dropped by Bezos, Sanchez, Lainey Wilson, Chris Hemsworth, Wheels Up, Ocean Spray, and Partake Foods. Regardless of who wins at this point, I feel like Stephanie Jones is done. If she even has the clients left, that would be shocking. Okay. And when all the dust settles, if these people somehow make it out successfully, like the lively parties, including Stephanie Jones, I will be again shocked by the world because despicable. Through it all, Abel remained loyal to Jones, sticking with her through thick and thin, despite growing doubts about Jones's ability to function professionally. By 2024, however, Jones had become increasingly embittered and hostile towards Abel. Jones frequently criticized Abel's management, manifested extreme paranoia about Abel's close relationships with clients and partners, and went out of her way to reprimand, demean, and embarrass Abel in front of junior employees she oversaw. Over time, Abel's concern about Jones' obvious downward spiral was heightened by the reality that there was no bottom in sight. In the final months of Abel's tenure, Jones had become even more erratic, clearly not sleeping, calling at all hours of the night in a frenzied state, senselessly pitting her own employees against each other, focusing her energy on catching employees in perceived acts of disloyalty, lowering morale still further, and torching her relationships with remaining JonesWorks clients. Just sounds like a real peach. Owners, managers, and leaders who try to set up their employees to catch them in wrongful acts. My gosh. Although Jones had always been... Here we go. Oh gosh, I hope that wasn't the angle the whole time. Sorry, just checking my frame since we're in the frame. Okay, I can't do nothing about that. Although Jones had been volatile, she now appeared to be actively unraveling. In one instant, Jones announced to Abel's subordinates that she had learned through psychic readings that Abel was an alcoholic and a gambling addict. Even if these statements were true, Jones's public announcement would be at best highly inappropriate. Here, however, the accusations are not remotely true. They have literally no basis in reality, and the employees to whom Jones made her pre-announcement were well aware of that. This girl is going to a psychic and then going back to the office and saying, I want this psychic deposed. I want a subpoena for this psychic. While Jones presumably intended to undermine Abel's credibility, she had actually significantly undermined her own and raised alarm about whether Jones was in the midst of a mental breakdown. Whew! I like the way that is written, because this is why you don't argue with crazy people. You know, this is why you don't engage with the crazy, because who's going to look crazy? Do you know what I mean? This is like, while she was so focused on making sure she looked good and Abel looked bad, or that she was on top and everyone else was under her, she lowered herself down. While Jones presumably intended to undermine Abel's credibility, she had actually significantly undermined her own and raised alarm about whether Jones was in the midst of a mental breakdown. On a different occasion, Jones announced again, per her psychic, that Abel would soon be pregnant with twins, humiliating and infuriating Abel, who Jones knew had struggled with fertility issues. Abel was also disgusted by Jones's pattern and practice of creating fake social media accounts to troll former employees and journalists she deemed hostile, including Puck News' Matt Belloni. Jones was obsessed with Belloni in particular. Abel also witnessed Jones working with journalists to plant and contribute to negative stories about former Jones Work clients who had fired Jones Works and Jones. She was smearing everybody else, creating fake accounts, planting fake stories and negative stories about her clients. Girl. And don't even get me started on the whole psychic and what you did to Jennifer Abel about her fertility. I already dragged you in other videos, but that is unhinged and it's bitter and it just screams insecure. Okay? When Abel requested that Jones Works offer its Los Angeles employees a modest 2% cost of living raise, Jones, who spent obscene amounts of Jones Works money on lunches, champagne, and manicures, told her that if that were to happen, it would have to come from Abel's paycheck. Already pushed to the brink, Abel finally had enough when Jones demanded that she corroborate falsified accusations about a senior Jones Works employee in an effort to drive him out. When Abel refused to go along with it, Jones responded with mockery, calling her a 12-year-old drama queen. On or about July 10th, 2024, Abel notified Jones of her departure from Jones Work. Abel later confirmed her decision on July 26, 2024, and communicated her intention to start her own business. Abel offered a 6-week transition period with an end date of August 23, 2024. Predictably, Jones took the news poorly, to say the least. Consistent with her increasingly erratic behavior, Jones swung from extreme to extreme, one minute desperately attempting to convince Abel to stay, the next berating her and cutting her out. Jones grew more combative. Abel found that she had been removed from client email distribution lists and left in the dark about meetings, calls, and events she was expected to attend. It was clear to Abel that Jones was trying to embarrass Abel and tarnish her professional reputation in advance of her departure. In her final week, Abel contacted Jones's chief and staff, Gordon Duran, concerning the release of her phone number and transfer of her personnel data upon her departure. Abel arranged for her phone number to be released so she could port it to a new device and retain decades worth of personal contacts, photos, private conversations with friends and family, and confidential financial data and access to accounts protected by two-factor authentication. Jones's chief of staff assured her multiple times in writing that JonesWorks would cooperate and uphold their agreement. At no point during her tenure did Abel consent to anyone at JonesWorks assessing, reviewing, or monitoring the contents of the device. JonesWorks did not have a policy in place affording them the right to do so. Neither Jones nor Duran suggested otherwise. Abel's willingness to let JonesWorks port her personal cell phone number to its phone plan was predicated on her reasonable expectation that she would retain sole and exclusive access to its contents and her private data and accounts. Had there been any reason to believe otherwise, Abel would never have agreed to that arrangement. Indeed, it would be imaginable to afford her employer the right to access or monitor, much less assert ownership of all of her private data. And here they show text messages between the JonesWorks chief of staff and her, where he's telling her, if I could pull this up real quick, regarding your phone, we can give it back to you. We can give it back to you your last week. So he's saying like they're going to give the phone number back. After all of this, they're going to give the phone number back. So crazy. Jones and JonesWorks steal all of Abel's private data and communications. We're getting into it. August 21st is a huge day. Everything happened on August 21st. Everything stems from this day. August 21st was when what we'll get into happened to Jennifer Abel. August 21st is also the day that Leslie Sloan called Melissa Nathan and told her be prepared to get sued. They just can't help telling themselves. You know what I'm saying? On August 21st, 2024, 2 days before her last day, Abel pulled up to the JonesWorks office in Beverly Hills. There, she was confronted by a physically imposing security guard, a forensic data extraction technical expert, and an attorney sitting in a conference table awash in documents. On information and belief, the attorney was affiliated with the firm Frankfurt, Kernet, Klan, and Sells, and the security and technology personnel were from the Hedgeworth Security Services. Also present was Jones's chief of staff, Duran, who was flown in unannounced from New York. Apart from Jones's chief of staff, Abel had never seen any of them before. After being ushered into the conference room, Abel noticed that the security guard was posted just outside its doors, positioned between the conference room and the office entrance, blocking the exit. She inferred that she was not free to leave. There, the attorney gestured at the documents and instructed Abel to review and sign them. Caught completely off guard, Abel was in shock over the hostile and intimidating display. Having never experienced anything like this, she had no idea what to do. Fearful that she would burst into tears and humiliate herself, which she knew that's what Jones wanted, Abel disassociated. Given the coercion and threats by JonesWorks' attorney, Abel understood that she could not leave without signing the documents, at least not without subjecting herself to legal action. Under extreme duress, Abel hurriedly signed the documents in the hope that she would be able to leave without interference. She did not digest their contents, however. Don't sign anything that you don't know what it is. Don't do it. After she signed the papers, JonesWorks' attorney demanded that Abel hand over her personal laptop. Abel complied. The Edgeworth contractor then conducted a forensic search of her system and turned up nothing. Thereafter, the attorney furnished a list of approximately 10 documents and accused Abel of having illicitly accessed and stolen them. Abel adamantly denied the accusation, which was untrue. A further forensic examination of her computer again turned up nothing. Nothing. Following the fruitless Fruitless. Following the fruitless search of Abel's laptop, Duran demanded that Abel hand over her phone, after which security would escort her out of the building. Abel was ordered to provide the passcode, which she was told was solely to facilitate the release of the phone number. While Abel had agreed to provide access to her laptop for a limited search in her presence, she did not consent to and was never asked to consent to a search of the contents of the iPhone. Because Abel had been ambushed, she had not had sufficient warning or time to wipe personal information from the phone, deregister it from her personal iCloud or email accounts, or otherwise secure the vast troves of personal and private data accessible from it. Still shell-shocked, intimidated by Jones's lawyer and security team, and desperate to leave, Abel reluctantly handed over her phone and provided her passcode for the limited purpose of facilitating the transfer of her phone number. It would also allow Abel to get a new phone and move on with her life without disruption. Oh, imagine. That would have been nice, huh, Jennifer Abel? Gosh, I'm so sorry you had to deal with Stephanie Jones. My gosh, she is a monster. After express confirmation from Duran and the Jones Works' attorney that they would release the phone number if she went straight to the Verizon store, Abel handed them the phone and was ushered out of the building as her colleagues watched in disbelief. Seeing that Abel had been stripped of her phone and therefore had no way to contact anyone, some current Jones Works employees reached out to Abel's partner, family, friends, and former coworkers to let them know what had happened. Abel went straight to a Verizon store a short distance away. Once there, Verizon contacted Jones Works to coordinate the release and transfer. Duran assured Abel and Verizon that they were in the process of effectuating the release and to bear with them for a few minutes. Abel never heard from them again. After hours of desperate, unanswered calls, Abel left Verizon in panic and despair. Abel realized Jones had double-crossed her in a very serious way. By refusing to release Abel's phone number, Jones Works had usurped Abel's private information and cut off Abel's access to critical accounts protected by two-factor authentication. As a result, Abel lost access to bank accounts, utilities, insurance, and virtually every other sensitive account. By contrast, Jones now unrestricted access to everything stored on Abel's phone, her text messages, emails, personal photos. Jones could read her communications with her fiance, parents, friends, everyone. Jones was acting purely out of spite. And if you guys want to read the text message, I'll just put it on the screen. I'll move myself out of the way so y'all can screenshot it if you like. And we're back. It took Abel over a month to regain control over all of her accounts. Meanwhile, she learned that Jones had been sharing her private text messages with the entire office, mocking and disparaging her. Having torched Abel's privacy and dignity, Jones started boasting that Abel's business was next. What Abel could not foresee was that Jones and Jones Works' gross invasion of her privacy would not stop upon her departure. In fact, it escalated. Jones and Jones Works retained access to Abel's iCloud for multiple months thereafter, monitoring and intercepting her private communications in real time. Abel was under the mistaken impression that by switching phone numbers, she had cut off Jones and Jones Works access to her text exchange. Not so. In fact, Abel's text messages were tied to her iCloud, not her phone number. Until Abel changed her iCloud password in January 2025 for unrelated reasons, Jones had been intercepting and monitoring all of her text exchanges, including not only with her clients, fiance, doctors, parents, and friends, but also with the undersigned counsel. If they can prove this, this is so bad. This is so bad. If they can prove this. Wow. The fact that they were monitoring her conversations with the legal team if they can prove that they are monitoring it and they share the information with the Sloan parties, like with Leslie Sloan and the Lively parties, it's done. It's a wrap for you. Crazy and illegal. The Wayfarer Baldoni account. For almost 4 years, Abel largely managed JonesWorks' work for Wayfarer Studios and Justin Baldoni out of its Los Angeles office. At all times during Wayfarer's 4-year engagement with JonesWorks, Abel was the point of person on the account. It was clear to Wayfarer, and Jones largely did not hide, that Jones considered them to be a lower prestige client and devoted her attention to clients such as Jeff Bezos and Tom Brady. But JonesWorks was in utter turmoil by July of 2024. Already bleeding clients and personnel, Jones learned that Business Insider was working on an unflattering story about her set to be published sometime in August. Jones felt that her reputation had been severely damaged by the Stephanie Jones Leaks website and social media accounts. Jones was desperate to keep her remaining clients. Given Abel's close relationship with Wayfarer and Baldoni, Jones was undoubtedly concerned that they would leave JonesWorks alongside her, and she wanted to make sure that did not happen. At the time, Wayfarer and Baldoni were in the midst of a massive PR crisis as news stories began to trickle out speculating about possible tension between Lively and Baldoni, largely due to the cast no longer following him on social media, just as the film was about to premiere. Wayfarer and Baldoni asked Abel to recommend a crisis manager specialist. After consulting with Jones, who had no viable ideas, Abel recommended that Wayfarer and Baldoni engage crisis PR expert Melissa Nathan to assist in navigating these choppy waters. The need for crisis PR expertise was particularly acute due to Lively's demand that Baldoni not be permitted to attend the premiere and the threat that Baldoni would be excluded from the press junket with the rest of the cast. Abel learned during the initial discussion with Nathan that, per her media contacts, a negative story was already being shopped around to multiple outlets positioning Baldoni's religion as a cult and accusing Baldoni of having fat-shamed Lively after he asked her personal trainer in private about her weight due to his history of severe back pain. Even though Abel felt strongly that Nathan was the right choice, she knew that Jones would be unhappy with the recommendation. Jones viewed Nathan as a competitor and had a history of bad-mouthing her to anyone who would listen, including to Nathan's own clients. Abel feared backlash from Jones, but felt strongly that Nathan was the best option. When Jones learned that Wayfarer was considering retaining Nathan, she was furious and immediately lashed out at Abel. We went through those texts in another video. She was really telling Jennifer Abel that she had to literally badmouth Nathan to Wayfarer in text. Pressuring her to disparage Nathan as a demonstration of loyalty to Jones. It's so clear in the text, it's actually crazy. After initially pushing back, Abel eventually relented after Jones called her crying and screaming and engaged in some light disparaging of Nathan to placate Jones. Jones then attempted to derail the engagement and exploited confidential client information to convince Wayfarer not to move forward with Nathan. Dan. I wonder what that information was. So she actually exploited confidential client information against Melissa Nathan to Wayfarer so that they wouldn't pick her. But as we all know, they did pick her, of course. That's why we're here today. But also they did tell them like, hey, I hear you. I see you. I get what you're saying. But after I talk with her, I'll let you know what I decide. At the end of the day, it's my life. It's my livelihood, right? Jones inserted herself into the mix in early August of 2024, seeking to box out Nathan and Abel. The problem, however, was that Jones had chosen not to pay attention to Wayfarer's leadership communication strategy or internal decision making, having long claimed to be too busy with higher profile clients. Wayfarer was fine with Jones's disengagement as Abel was their trusted advisor, and they had no interest in being a pawn in JonesWorks' office politics. In addition, Jones had chosen to take a lengthy vacation in Europe during this critical period of the press campaign and premiere of the film. Even from afar, Jones's efforts were ham-fisted, unwelcome, and sporadic given her distance from Wayfarer's day-to-day business. Notwithstanding Jones's general disengagement, it is not true that she was kept in the dark. To the extent she was out of the loop, it was by choice. Jones was copied on virtually all communications during this period and was privy to Wayfarer's predicament and its chosen strategy of non-confrontation. Non-confrontation. Had there been a smear campaign, as was later alleged by her and the Lively parties, Jones would undoubtedly have known about it in real time. I have been deeply involved in strategy planning, account management, and high-level PR and media comms, as well as crisis, admitted Jones in an email on August 21st, 2024. Yeah, girl, so which is it? Because you can't have both. You can't say, oh, you didn't know all of this stuff was happening, but then now sue them because they breached a contract and you were like the person and you were involved on everything every single day. So like, which is it, girl? You know? These people are so crazy. They just say whatever they want. Like it's not all recorded. And like, you know what I mean? Like, which is it? It's so crazy. At the time, Lively's and Baldoni's team had negotiated an uneasy truce in which neither side would participate in negative coverage of the other. Lively's team had already broken that truce, but the Wayfarer party did not know that then. Though the Wayfarer's team had to date been acting only defensively in response to press inquiries. But on August 8th, 2024, Jones, in another desperate attempt to reinsert herself, contacted a Daily Mail reporter about a story that they had published about Baldoni and Lively. She did so in direct violation of Wayfarer's instruction not to talk to the press given the truce with Lively's team. Nonetheless, Jones bragged to Wayfarer about trading calls with the Daily Mail in an effort to appear engaged on the account. Nathan and Abel were left to deal with the fallout. This is the email that she sent to everyone saying that she was talking to Lillian from the Daily Mail. She's been so nice. She'll get it fixed. Let me talk to her. I'm going to contact her. This blatant disregard of Wayfarer's strategy sparked a chain of unfortunate developments. Sloan and Sony learned that purportedly someone from Baldoni's team had been communicating negatively to the media. It was clearly Jones, and Wayfarer's leadership was livid, as was Sony. With her reckless and unauthorized activities, Jones had made that scenario much more likely. In response, Wayfarer instructed Jones to cease all activities on behalf of Wayfarer and Baldoni for the time being and to let Abel and another Los Angeles-based Jones Works employee, Matthew Mitchell, handle the crisis alongside Nathan. At this time, Nathan started hearing from other journalists that Sloan, Blake Lively's PR, was planting negative stories about Baldoni and was under the impression that Baldoni's camp had broken the truce. Anxious Sony executives began reaching out to Wayfarer seeking clarity. Yet Jones panicked about being blamed, refused to be sidelined, insisting that she needed to contact Sony and Lively's PR teams to clarify that she had not planted any negative stories about Lively. He told her not to do that, to which Jones responded that she could do whatever she wants to clear her name and that Wayfarer could not stop her from making calls. Desperate to salvage her reputation with Lively and Sony, Jones emailed a number of key Sony executives working on the film to declare that she was in Europe with her husband, partnered at WME, Jason Hodes, and placing all blame on her team. In her attempt to save face, Jones ruptured her relationship with Wayfarer and Baldoni. Yup, that'll do it for me. No thank you. Although Jones ultimately agreed to stand down, Wayfarer and Baldoni expressed that they had lost all trust in her. After parachuting in for self-interested reasons, nearly blowing up the truce with Lively's team, and lashing out when told to stop, Jones became a magnet for drama when it was least needed. As September drew near, Wayfarer and Baldoni, with the assistance of Abel and Nathan, continued their tireless efforts to promote the film, put out fires, and see the project through to the finish line. Stewing in jealousy towards Abel and resentment towards Wayfarer and Baldoni, Jones clearly saw the writing on the wall. Knowing she would soon be terminated, Jones started taking steps transparently intended to make it harder to cut her loose. Those steps including sending email after unwelcome email to Heath and others, long after the relationship had irrevocably ruptured, to lay the groundwork to contest that she had been detached and non-responsive for years. In contrast with Abel, who was loyal, trusted, and even-tempered while working around the clock through the crisis, Jones was a walking disaster whose... Do you hear, Stephanie Jones? Did you read this one? Okay. In contrast with Abel, who was loyal, trusted, and even-tempered while working around the clock through this crisis, Jones was a walking disaster whose self-absorption, disloyalty, and insubordination had become a significant headache. Rather than accept the end of the Wayfarer relationship with professionalism and decorum, Jones started threatening to sue, demanding exorbitant payment for work not done, and protesting that she had done an amazing job. So which is it, girl? You did an amazing job, or you were in the dark and had no idea what was going on? Which one? You know which one. You can't have both. On information and belief, so they have been informed and they believe, Jones stewed in resentment and indignity, unable to bear the loss of another Jones Works client. She set out to take revenge on Abel, Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Nathan, exploiting the data that she had unlawfully accessed and stolen from Abel's phone. Jones disclosed at least some of Abel's private communications to the Lively parties no later than August 21st, 2024. Sloan, Lively's publicist, confirmed as much to Nathan on a phone call that evening. Sloan gloated that based on what she had already seen, Nathan would expect to be sued. Nathan could expect to be sued. On information and belief. Whew! Somebody's snitching and I love it. Shortly thereafter, Jones took things a step further and transmitted Abel's stolen communications directly to Sloan, Lively, and Reynolds. So they're saying that she took her phone, transferred all the data, which some of it personal, half business, half personal. Think about all of the stuff that's in your phone. And she gave it to Leslie Sloan, Blake Lively, and Ryan Reynolds' camp. Unbelievable. But I believe it because she has done crazy stuff. This woman is unhinged. All three of them belong together. Leslie Sloan, Blake Lively, and Stephanie Jones. At the time, Lively was reeling from a storm of negative publicity, devoid of scruples concerning the unlawful means by which Jones obtained the communication, and desperate for a scapegoat for Lively's bad press. The Lively parties likely saw a unique opportunity. While the contents of Abel's communications do not support the existence of an untraceable smear campaign, they do show that by the time of the film's premiere, Abel and others in Wayfarer's circle held Lively in deep disdain and to a certain extent relished in her self-immolation. These sentiments were the natural result of the Wayfarer party's first-hand knowledge of Lively's vicious behavior and malignant persona. Right, so just because they definitely did not like Blake Lively and actually loved the fact that she was getting bad press and that the world was waking up to who she really was, the monster that the Wayfarer and Justin Baldoni saw her and felt her and knew her to be through their own experience, the world was now waking up to that. Because they relished in that does not mean that they did a freaking smear campaign. In turning over these materials to the Lively parties, Jones knew full well how they would be used, with slicing, dicing, cherry-picking messaging, and in some cases outright alteration. The Lively parties exploited Abel's text messages to great effect. Joining forces with the New York Times, the Lively parties commissioned the hit. However, for different reasons, the lively parties on the one hand and Jones Works on the other hand needed to create a veneer of legitimacy. The lively parties likely anticipated or were told directly that the New York Times would not traffic in stolen communications under these circumstances and needed the color of law. Jones Works, for their part, wanted to insulate themselves from legal exposure to Wayfarer for breaches of confidentiality. Accordingly, on September 27th, so yeah, that's what I've been saying. Sorry, I'm just rereading this again. Jones Works, for their part, wanted to insulate themselves from legal exposure. Right, that's why they wanted to make sure that there was a subpoena, because even though if she turned over all of Abel's phones, Sloan and the New York Times wouldn't be in trouble for that because they were given that information. They have that information. However, Stephanie Jones would be in a lot of trouble for breach of confidentiality. That's why I think they all worked together and all colluded together to come up with that sham van lawsuit. Accordingly, on September 27th, 2024, working hand in glove with Jones and Jones Work, the lively parties and their counsel at Manat, Phelps & Phillips, LLP, initiated a sham legal proceeding in New York State Court, Van Zandt, Inc., Does 1 through 10 exclusive. The sham lawsuit was nothing more than a transparent ploy to obtain subpoena power. The plaintiff, Van Zandt, Inc., is an inactive corporate entity affiliated with Lively and Reynolds and entirely unrelated to the film or the Wayfarer parties. The lawsuit asserts 3 causes of action: breach of contract, breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and faithless servants against Doe defendants only. The lawsuit does not explain how or why Van Zandt was unable to identify the proper defendants, especially in the context of a breach of a contract action. Instead, Van Zandt, Lively and Reynolds, and Manat implausibly claim not to be privy to the identities of its contractual counterparties or its employees, contractors, agents, or representatives. The lawsuit is devoid of specific allegations against anyone, much less Abel, relying exclusively on generalized recitations or boilerplate legal jargon. Notably, Van Zandt never requested the assignment of a judge, substituted the Doe defendants for named parties, or served the complaint to any defendant. The only docket entries are the complaint and a notice of dismissal filed on December 19, 2024, the day before Lively filed her CRD complaint against the Wayfarer parties. The same day the lawsuit was filed, September 27, 2024, Jones warned a departing employee not to work for Abel because her business wouldn't be around much longer. They just tell on themselves every single time. They cannot zip it. They're the worst criminals, because they're like the worst bad guys. They come up with this big plan and then they just fumble it because they can't stop bragging about it. Once the lawsuit was filed, the Lively parties used it to issue a subpoena to Jones Works for all the data stored on Abel's phone, including private communications from her iCloud and email accounts, as well as potentially privileged information. Since there was no identifiable parties and no party had been served, the subpoenas were issued without notice, depriving Abel of any knowledge of the subpoena, much less the opportunity to object. Plaintiff is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges, that the sham lawsuit was contrived by the Lively parties and Jones, acting in concert to facilitate and cover up Jones's release of the data extracted from Abel's phone and personal accounts under the guise of legal process, without risking detection by interested parties such as Abel, who could have intervened to stop the flagrant abuse of power. As planned by the parties upon receipt of the sham subpoena, or on about October 1st, 2024, Jones and Jones Works blithely surrendered the entire contents of Abel's iPhone communications for a second time, creating a veneer of legitimacy and affording Jones and Jones Works plausible deniability once the New York Times came through for Lively. As a result of Jones's malicious scheme, Abel's life has been turned upside down. Her career and reputation have been destroyed, her private information leaked, and her email inbox and social media pages filled with a daily stream of death threats and abuse. Well, please know, Jennifer Abel, here, we're on your side, okay? 100%. I am with you. I am on your side. Dealing with Stephanie Jones must have been, I know what it's like to work in toxic work environments, and I'm with you. Okay, this is unbelievable. And you think just because when you leave, it's going to be over, but it isn't, because there's ops everywhere and they follow you and they will do whatever they can to make sure that you stay small and quiet. The backlash against Wayfarer and Baldoni has been equally devastating, with Baldoni wrongfully labeled as a sex pest, his accolades rescinded, and his future projects thrown into doubt. We love you, Wayfarer. We love you, Justin Baldoni. In an unimaginable invasion of Abel's privacy and dignity, Jones and the lively parties now possess the full contents of Abel's iCloud and email accounts, including her photos, text messages, and emails. Abel lives in fear of what is to come, given the vast troves of personal data in the possession of these hostile actors. As a result of Jones and Jones' works tortuous conduct, Abel has suffered enormous harm to her personal and professional life. All of this harm has accrued in the state of California, where Abel lives and works. Whew. Then they just go into the cause of actions. The first cause of action is a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse, and they state tons of laws, including the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, enacted in 1986 as part of the ECPA, prohibits the intentional accessing without authorization or in excess of authorization a computer under certain circumstances. They say like what the computer is. They state other laws: knowing and with intent to defraud, access a protected computer with authorization. A computer is defined by any electronic, magnetic, optical, electromechanical, or high-speed data processing device. Abel's private data, including her text messages and emails, was stored and hosted on remote servers located around the country and owned and operated by third parties, including Apple and Google. These servers constitute protected computers. As alleged, Jones and Jones Works intentionally accessed these protected computers knowingly and without authorization or consent, or in a manner that exceeded their authorization. Abel has suffered harm and injury due to Jones and Jones Works authorized access to the communications containing in her private and personal information. The second cause of action is violations of stored communications. So again, they go over exactly like all of these laws, as detailed wherein Abel was not aware of and did not consent to Jones and Jones Works obtaining access to and intercepting, disclosing, and disseminating her electronic communications. Jones and Jones Works violated the SCA 18 by willfully and intentionally accessing Abel's private communications and data stored in servers and other electronic facilities without authorization or in excess of authorization. The third cause of action: violations of the Federal Wiretap. The Federal Wiretap Act, the FWA, as amended by the ECPA, prohibits the intentional interception, use, or disclosure of any wire, oral, or electronic communication. Under the FWA, no person may intentionally intercept, endeavor to intercept, or procure any wire, oral, or electronic communications. Abel had a reasonable expectation that after her termination from Jones Works and Jones Works would not surreptitiously intercept and divert the electronic communications described above. Jones and Jones Works have used the illicitly obtained contents of these electronic communications to, inter alia, 1. Monitor Abel's activities after her termination from Jones Works. 2. Spy on her conversation with third parties, including Wayfarer and Baldoni. 3. Interfere with Abel's nascent small business and gain a competitive advantage in relation thereto. 4. Harm Abel's career and reputation. 5. Cause Abel mental and emotional distress. And 6. Share them with hostile third parties, including Lively, Reynolds, Sloan, and affiliated entities. Abel seeks compensation, injunctive, and equitable relief in an amount to be determined at trial, including an award of reasonable attorney fees and costs and punitive or expiatory damages for Jones and Jones Works' willful violation. The fourth cause of action is violations of California Penal Code Jones and Jones Works violated the provisions of California Penal Code by doing following acts: knowingly accessing and without permission obtaining, altering, disseminating, or otherwise using Abel's data. In doing these acts wherein alleged, Jones and Jones Works acted with oppression, fraud, malice, and in conscious disregard of Abel's rights, and Abel is therefore entitled to punitive and expiatory damages. In violation of California Penal Code 502, Jones and Jones Works became liable to Abel for her attorney fees and cause. Fifth cause of action, invasion of privacy. Abel has a legally protected privacy interest in her private communications, personal data, financial information, personal photos, and other private data. Jones and Jones Works intentionally invaded Abel's privacy by, among other things, hacking into Abel's personal and business emails and text messages in order to secure information for use in legal proceedings against her. B, without authorization, accessing, copying, disseminating, using, and publicly disclosing, including to Abel's former co-workers, that Lively Parties and the New York Times, private information obtained from Abel's personal and business email accounts and text messages. C, intruding upon the seclusion and private affairs of Abel and accessing Abel's computer system, computer network, and computer services, including her email and iCloud accounts, and the personal information contained therein, in a manner highly offensive to a reasonable person. Jones and Jones Works knew, or should have known, that Abel had a reasonable expectation of privacy, that her communications and personal data would remain private and not be accessed, copied, disseminated, or publicized to Jones Works employees, the Lively Parties, and other third parties. The sixth cause of action, false light against Jones Works and Jones. As alleged herein, Jones and Jones Works publicly disclosed information or material regarding Abel's moral character and personal and professional life, which showed Abel in a false light. The false light created by these disclosures was highly offensive and objectionable to a reasonable person in Abel's position, in that it made Abel an object of scorn, pity, ridicule, humiliation, and other sufferings. Jones and Jones Works knew the public disclosure would create a false impression about Abel, or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. The conduct of Jones and Jones Works described herein was a substantial factor in causing Abel's harm, constituted a serious invasion of her right to privacy, and was an egregious breach of social norms and shocks that conscience. Seventh cause of action, conversion. Abel owns and or has a possessory interest in the phone number. I blocked the phone number. I don't know. It's probably not active anymore, but I just didn't want to share it on here. When she joined Jones Works in 2020, she had owned, controlled, and used the phone number for approximately 20 years. 20 years. Eighth cause of action, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The misconduct of Jones and Jones Works and its officers, directors, employees, and agents described herein was outrageous and extreme, and transcended the bounds of human decency. Jones and Jones Works had its officers, directors, employees, and agents intended to cause Abel emotional distress, or acted with reckless disregard for the probability of causing her emotional distress. The outrageous conduct of Jones and Jones Works and its officers, directors, employees, and agents was a substantial factor in causing Abel severe emotional distress, and was the direct proximate cause of the emotional distress. Ninth cause of action, negligent infliction of emotional distress. The misconduct of Jones and Jones Works. Oh my gosh, I hope I don't get hiccups. The misconduct of Jones and Jones Works and its officers, directors, employees, and agents described herein was outrageous and extreme, and transcended the bounds of human decency. Thank you. This is what I've been saying all along. Regardless of what they did, whether it be illegal or not, it is absolutely morally corrupt and disgusting. And he says it perfect here. It's transcended the bounds of human decency. As an employee under their supervision, Abel was owed a duty of care by Jones and Jones Works. 10th cause of action against Jones Works and Jones. Promissory fraud. On August 21st, 2024, Jones Works, through its agent Goran Duran and its attorney and its Jones's direction, promised Abel that if she gave up her Jones Works issued iPhone and provided her passcode, Jones Works would release her phone number and ensure she had exclusive access to her private data stored on and the accounts accessible from the iPhone. Abel reasonably relied on the promise made by Jones Works. However, Jones Works never intended to perform the promise when it was made. Instead, Jones Works, through its agency and attorney, intended to and did dupe Abel into giving up the iPhone and passcode so as to access, copy, and disseminate without authorization the private data stored on the device and information from accounts accessible from the device. Jones Works also intended to and did retain possession of Abel's phone number to cause chaos in her life, which it did. Jones Works did not perform in accordance with its promise. Prayer for relief. Prayer for relief for Jennifer Abel. Wherefore, counterclaimant Jennifer Abel prays for the following relief. 1. Monetary damages in an amount according to proof. 2. Civil penalties pursuant to statute. 3. For pre- and post-judgment interest. 4. For punitive and explanatory damages according to proof. 5. For attorney fees and costs incurred by Abel as applicable. And 6. Such other legal and equitable relief as the court deems appropriate. Demand for jury trial. Are you still with me? That was a long one, but I think it was very important to go over all of the specific details, you heard? The next one is going to be really short because it copies a lot of the same stuff that they're saying to paint the picture about Stephanie Jones, but it adds a few details that I also think are very important. So we're going to go over now the amended lawsuit to Stephanie Jones from all of the Wayfarer parties, including Justin Baldoni. It will be a lot quicker, and then we'll get into the judge's reply last night to Stephanie Jones wanting to be dismissed, and because of these new amended lawsuits towards her, what his letter said. Okay, let's make this quick. Let's just get into it with some of the most relevant information. I'm not going to go over everything in this one because this is from all of the Wayfarer parties, and it's their answer, the LLC's amended answer to the complaint, counterclaims, and demand for a jury trial. We basically covered a lot, obviously, in Jennifer Abel's response. So again, they just go to answering all of the stuff and the allegations, and it's all pretty much the same. They just deny all of the allegations from Stephanie Jones, like every single one, point by point by point. Like, no. Deny. Now, they also have their defenses. So the complainant in each claim alleged therein fails to state facts sufficient to constitute any claim for relief against the defendants. Then they have all of their defenses here. So Jennifer Abel had 31 defenses. And then they have 36 defenses, prayer for relief, whereof defendant Wayfarer and Studios LLC prays for relief as follows: that the complaint be dismissed with prejudice and plaintiffs take nothing herein. The judgment be entered in favor of the defendant and against plaintiffs for cost of suit incurred in this action, and for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Demand for jury trial. All right, y'all. Let's go. So it just goes into their counterclaims again, the general allegations. And then it says, like, they're basically their relationship. We know a lot about their relationship already, but it did claim that in or around May 2020, that's when Wayfarer engaged Jones Work to provide strategic communication services and serve as its PR representative. This was crazy. So the agreement went into effect May 7th of 2020 for a 1-year term, automatically renewing thereafter unless terminated. A true and correct copy of the agreement is attached here too as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. In consideration for Jones's provisions of services, Wayfarer agreed to pay her $20,000 a month. $20,000 a month this girl, Stephanie Jones, is being paid. And we have to remember that Wayfarer is one of her smallest clients. So guess how much The Rock was paying her, Tom Brady was paying her, Johnson & Johnson was paying her, and they were all leaving. No wonder why she had to hold on to this. Can you imagine losing $20,000 a month? Wow. As part of the agreement, JonesWorks agreed to provide such services in a professional manner and in accordance with the goals mutually established by Wayfarer and JonesWorks. The agreements contained a provision requiring JonesWorks to keep confidential Wayfarer's confidential and proprietary information, as well as sensitive information concerning Wayfarer or related parties. So who broke the contract there, Miss Stephanie Jones? You had a contract with them and you broke it because you leaked all of their confidential stuff. Throughout Wayfarer's engagement of JonesWorks hereunder, Wayfarer may disclose or provide JonesWorks with confidential, proprietary, and or sensitive information above. Wayfarer, its customers, or other related parties' confidential information. JonesWorks shall use reasonable and diligent efforts to keep confidential information confidential, provided that JonesWorks may disclose such information to third parties to the extent necessary to fulfill its obligations under this agreement or to its legal representatives. JonesWorks shall not use such information for any purpose beyond the performance of Jones's services hereunder, unless otherwise required by law or court of contempted jurisdiction. So it was in her agreement that she couldn't share this stuff unless it was by law. So then by law, they made up that sham lawsuit. No way that this is in the contract. And it's also, they shammed the entire legal process so that she could do this because in her contract with Wayfarer, it said that it had to be by law. Notwithstanding the foregoing, JonesWorks is not liable for any third party's disclosure of Wayfarer's confidential information so long as such third party did not obtain the confidential information as a result of JonesWorks' breach or failure to uphold its obligations. Guys, this is so bad for Stephanie Jones, and I am here for it. The agreement contains a New York choice law provisions that shall be governed by, construed under, and enforced in accordance with the laws of the state of New York applicable to agreements made and to be fully performed therein. Relevant context regarding the film. It just talks about Justin Baldoni. He founded Wayfarer in 2019. They intended that Wayfarer be a different kind of studio, one developed to producing world-class entertainment with a mission-driven purpose. In pursuit of that vision, in 2019, Wayfarer acquired the rights of the film It Ends With Us. Inspired by the book, Baldoni approached Hoover with the possibility of a film adaptation. Familiar with her previous work, Hoover told Baldoni that she believed he should be the right person. It goes into how they wanted 1% to go to no more when they signed on with Sony. That Wayfarer and Baldoni felt a deep sense of responsibility to do justice to Hoover's work and meaningful capture of the experience of Lily Bloom. They cast Blake Lively, entrusting her with fulfilling that vision. For reasons now widely known, that turned out to be an unwise decision. You said it, not me. You said it before me. You know what I'm saying? Without diving into the full sequence of events, which are the subject of active litigation, Lively ended up stealing control of the movie, hijacking the premiere, and taking aim at the personnel and professional reputations of Baldoni and the Wayfarer team in an apparent attempt to drive Wayfarer out of business. For present purposes, it suffices to say that the Wayfarer and Baldoni have significant public relations needs in the summer of 2024 before, during, and after the film's premiere. Jones and JonesWorks act against Wayfarer's interest and breach the agreement. It was at this time that Stephanie Jones, seemingly in the midst of a downward spiral, decided to stir up unnecessary drama and discord, throwing elbows for self-interested reasons, undermining and eventually determining JonesWorks' point person at Wayfarer, refusing to follow instructions, and generally causing more problems than she was solving. In doing so, Jones ruptured her relationship with the Wayfarer team and Baldoni and ultimately rendered any continued engagement by Jones or JonesWorks undeniable and intolerable. That is especially so given that Wayfarer and Baldoni later learned about the true magnitude of Jones's malice. For almost 4 years, JonesWorks for Wayfarer and Baldoni was managed by Jennifer Abel. I just want to see here. If we do $20,000 a month times. They've already paid in 4 years at $20,000 a month. They've given Stephanie Jones almost $1 million, $960,000. Almost $1 million, and she's a lower end client. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. They're saying that for the 4 years that they were with her, everything was managed by Jennifer Abel. Yet by July 2024, things were not going well for Jones. Wayfarer and Baldoni asked Abel to recommend a crisis PR. We all know now that that was Melissa Nathan, and that they were going to help her. She was going to help them navigate the choppy waters with the crazy Blake Lively. When Jones inserted herself into the mix in August 2024, she was transparently seeking to box out Nathan and Abel. The problem, however, was that Jones had chosen not to be privy to Wayfarer's leadership's communication strategy or internal decision-making, having long claimed to be too busy with high-profile clients. Wayfarer was fine with Jones's disengagement, as Abel was their trusted advisor and they had no interest in being a pawn in Jones's office politics. As Jones tried to stir up drama and undermine Abel's authority, Wayfarer and Baldoni were forced solely on managing the crisis in front of them. Yeah, girl, like they already have so much stuff to deal with. You're making it worse. They just go in again to the letters that she was communicating with the Daily Mail. At this time, Nathan started hearing from other journalists that Sloan was planting negative stories about Baldoni and that she was breaking the truce that apparently they had, because Baldoni's team and Lively's team made a truce, but 9 minutes later, Blake Lively's team broke that truce, and they were the ones smearing Justin Baldoni, while Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer only had to defend themselves. It's so sick. Whenever I read, whenever I get into this, I just does anyone else just blood boil because it's so right in your face exactly what happened, and they're trying to oh my gosh, it's just so obvious by everything that we've seen so far. Do you know what I mean? Jones panicked about being blamed, refused to be sidelined, and insisted that she needed to contact Sony. So we already know all of that. Although Jones ultimately agreed to stand down, Wayfarer and Baldoni had lost all trust in her. After parachuting in for self-interested reasons, nearly blowing up the truth with Lively's team and lashing out when told to stop, Jones became a magnet for drama when it was least needed. But Jones would not give it a rest. Ironically, given her later attempt to fabricate a smear campaign narrative, it was Jones, not Wayfarer, Baldoni, Abel, or Nathan, who started advocating for a more progressive public relations strategy. Her advice was not heeded. So she was the one. She's going to Blake Lively and Lively's team, be like, oh, they did a smear campaign. Oh, they did this. Here are the text messages. Here's all of Abel's stuff. Meanwhile, Stephanie Jones the whole time was trying to get them to attack. It's just so crazy. And she has a whole business thing about how they're going to flood it with headlines and do all of this stuff and literally smear her. That was your idea, Stephanie Jones, and they didn't take it. It's so crazy. Even Jamie Heath wrote to her. This was on August 14th. So can you imagine they're already fighting with the Lively. They're being up against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Leslie Sloan, Sony, Maximum Effort, Taylor Swift, Hugh Jackman, all of the you know what I mean? They're up against all of these people. All of the headlines are coming out, doing all of this stuff. And now you have your own PR person breaking the truce, going against your contract, going against your game plan, and then fighting you on it. With enemies like this, who needs friends? I could never. They're supposed to be on the same team. Stephanie Jones is so crazy. The amount of stress that Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath must have been dealing with in August and still went out there and put on a smiley face. I just can't. And to know that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were doing this in August to them, having these meetings with Sony, trying to get them to apologize, talking to the media, starting their own smear campaign against Justin, and then telling us to grab our florals and bring your girlfriends. Disgusting. I will never, ever like these people ever again. Jamie Heath replies to Stephanie, "Hi Stephanie, we are fully aware of all of this and we are handling it. As a reminder to my previous instructions, Please do not respond, contact, or do anything as it pertains to Justin or Wayfarer. We have the team that we are comfortable with to handle this, and while you may have thoughts and ideas, I am reiterating to stand down. Thank you. Over the next week or so, Wayfarer and Jones went back and forth, with Wayfarer reiterating that it did not want Jones acting on its behalf and to leave on the on-ground work to Abel and Nathan. On August 21st, Wayfarer learned that Jones' work had suddenly terminated Abel, threatening her, seizing her phone, and marching her out of Jones' Works Los Angeles. So obviously she is not going to like that. Do you know? Like, Wayfarer isn't going to like that. They're not about behavior like this. It's absolutely crazy. So then they contact Stephanie Jones and is like, yo, what happened with Jennifer Abel? Like, we're hearing crazy stories, whatever it was. She sends them this email pretty much just being like, I mean, we'll just read it because it's kind of nuts, but like, hi, Jamie, Justin, Wayfarer, you, Tara, and team are extremely important to us. I received your text a little over an hour ago, and I'm currently unable to make calls on my cell at my current location. I'm so sorry. Blank, one of our senior VPs whom you've had calls, whom you have cited, has been one of your day-to-day senior executives on your account, said to just have spoken with you and nothing was urgent. It was about an announcement on the new book adaptation. We're working on placing it on the heels of It Ends With Us. Your below email is inaccurate. As you know, I've been deeply involved in strategy planning, account management, and high-level PR and media comms, as well as crisis, until you asked me to stop communicating on behalf of Justin and Wayfarer on August 9, 2024, and allow only Jennifer, Matthew, and team to handle. I've been on set during shoots and have had numerous calls weekly with my team and yours, as well as many with Justin, particularly regarding Blake, often at 11 p.m., 1 a.m. New York. My commitment spans not only the past 8 years, but also the last 4 since you joined. This has been one person. This has never been one person, but rather it has been a true team effort with my full support alongside a dedicated team at Jones Work, including a senior vice president, 2 senior publicists, several account executives, and other coordinators working tirelessly for Justin and Wayfarer. On August 9, 2024, you indicated that you wanted only Jennifer Abel and Blank and team to communicate on behalf of Justin and Wayfarer. It's my understanding that Blank was retained and began communicating with teams just 4 days later on August 13, 2024, which demonstrates that I wouldn't have been stepping in mid-trial. I have spoken to and I am attempted to reach Blank yesterday about a magazine cover for Justin that I have been working on for the last year now. As I noted below, I've also made many attempts to contact you through email and phone, but I have not received any responses. We have an exclusive contract with you through May 2025. We have an exclusive contract with you through May 2025. You contacted a crisis PR firm to handle all crisis-related matters. If you would now like us to help with that, we absolutely can and will. Please let me know. And please know that our team at Jones Works is well equipped to manage everything, as we always have, without missing a beat. Without missing a beat? Jamie, he's literally messaged you 1 million times because you're not listening. You're crazy, girl. So as September drew near, Wayfarer and Baldoni, with the assistance of Abel and Nathan, continued their tireless efforts to promote the film. Although Wayfarer and Baldoni were not yet aware of the magnitude of Jonah's betrayal, Jones clearly expected Wayfarer to terminate the Jones Works agreement. Notwithstanding her own despicable and surreptitious conniving, Jones cynically started taking steps transparently intended to make it harder to cut her loose. Wayfarer and Baldoni now viewed Jones as a walking disaster who had demonstrated an astonishing degree of self-absorption, disloyalty, and insubordination during an existential crisis. She is a walking disaster. After Jones suddenly and unceremoniously fired Abel in the midst of the crisis, leaving Wayfarer in the lurch, communications between Jones and Wayfarer broke down completely. Jones insisted that they only speak through lawyers and made erratic interranged threats to sue, demanding exorbitant payments for work not done and insisting against evidence that she was doing an amazing job. Wayfarer and Baldoni considered her behavior to be a material breach of the agreement and advised Jones that they were terminating the Jones Work agreement at the end of August. During this period, Jones was stewing in anger and resentment for Wayfarer. Baldoni, and above all, Abel. And she devised the plan to take revenge on all of them through theft and dissemination of Abel's private communications with individuals in the Wayfarer circle. Upon information and belief, Jones falsely told Sloan that Wayfarer, along with Abel and Nathan, had orchestrated a malicious smear campaign to destroy Lively's reputation as retaliation for Lively's portrayed complaints about sexual harassment on set. Jones knew that this was false, as not only was she well aware that Lively had not actually been sexually harassed on set, she also knew that there had not been a smear campaign. This is clear because Jones was copied on many of the Wayfarers' emails and text threads during the relevant period and knew full well that the Wayfarers was scarcely engaging with the press at all in August 2024, much less carrying out offensive tactics in retaliation for something that never happened. On information and belief, shortly thereafter, Jones took things up a step further and transmitted Abel's stolen communications directly to Stone, Lively, and Reynolds. So this is on information and belief. So they have, or claim to have, information, at least a witness or something. They have some sort of information, and also they believe it to be true that these things did indeed happen. At the time, Lively was reeling, so then it just goes into like, she was reeling from all of the bad press. So then when Stephanie Jones gave her the phone, they believed it, But all that's on the phone is their communications show that they really, really, really did not think too highly of Blake Lively. Jones continued discussions with the Lively parties over the subsequent months, reiterating the false allegations that Wayfarer had orchestrated a retaliatory smear campaign. For different reasons, the Lively parties on the other hand and Jones Works on the other hand needed to create a veneer of legitimacy. The sham lawsuit was nothing more than a transparent ploy to obtain subpoena power. Plaintiff is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges, that upon receiving the sham subpoena on or about October 1st, 2024, Jones Works turned over the entire contents of Abel's iPhone and cloud-stored communications for a second time, creating a veneer of legitimacy and affording Jones Works plausible deniability once the New York Times came through for Lively. Although the information sought by the sham subpoena implicated Wayfarer directly, at no point did Jones Works, or other counsel provide notice of the subpoena to Wayfarer or its representatives. Upon information and belief, the entire affair was orchestrated by the Lively parties, Jones Works, to fly under the radar and enable them to paper over their unlawful conduct through additional unlawful conduct. In December 2024, the Wayfarer team finally learned of the magnitude of Jones's betrayal as a result of Jones's deliberate and unlawful disclosure of their private information, which Lively's team exploited to concoct a false and disturbing narrative about them. Wayfarer and Baldoni have been irrevocably harmed. Following the coordinated drop of Lively's fantastical Civil Rights Department complaint and an explosive New York Times article, Wayfarer and Baldoni became objects of public scorn and derision. Baldoni has been wrongfully labeled as a sex pest, his accolades have been tarnished, and his future projects thrown into doubt. The same is true for Wayfarer, which has been falsely cast as an enabler of sexual misconduct and the architect of a vicious retaliation campaign against a victim of such misconduct. Indeed, its very viability as a studio has been thrown into doubt as a direct result of Jones's actions on behalf of Jones Works. In response to Jones Works and Jones's profoundly cynical decision to take legal action under these circumstances, Wayfarer now asserts its own claims. Oh, gosh. My foot was falling asleep, you heard? So their first cause of action, breach of contract. So it lists the contract and it just says that they breached the confidentiality provision by voluntarily and maliciously disclosing the contents. The second cause of action is breach of contract count 2, which is a valid and enforceable contract. Jones Works designated under the agreement. Under the terms of the agreement, in exchange for a monthly fee, Jones Works agreed to provide strategic communications and public relations services in a professional manner and in accordance with the goals mutually established by Wayfarer. Third cause of action is breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. As alleged, Jones and Jones Works engaged in conduct that prevented Wayfarer from receiving the benefit contemplated under the agreement, including by maliciously feeding its confidential information to hostile third parties. Fourth cause of action is defamation per se. So on information believed, Jones and Jones Works made one or more statements to persons other than Wayfarer, including without limitations Leslie Sloan, Blake Lively, and Ryan Reynolds. I mean, she did a lot of things, but they exposed Wayfarer to hatred, contempt, ridicule, and causing them to get shunned or avoided from her statements. The statements made by Jones and Jones Works about Wayfarer were false, and Jones knew the statements were false or had serious doubts about the truth of the statements. And their prayer for relief. Wherefore, counterclaim Wayfarer prays for the following relief for a money judgment for representing compensatory damages, including subsequent damages, lost wages, earnings, and all other sums of money together with interest on those amounts in an amount to be proven at trial, for pre- and post-judgment interest, for punitive and exemplary damages, for attorney fees and costs, including incurred by Wayfarer as applicable, and such other legal and equitable relief as for court deems appropriate. Demand for jury trial. So after reading both of those new amended lawsuits, what do you think? Do you think that Stephanie Jones, like what her team said about them having nothing and it's conspiracy theories and they're just a desperate attempt? What are we talking about? If you agree the way I agree that Stephanie Jones is we got the fireworks again. We got the fireworks again, girl. But if you're thinking the way I'm thinking, then you're thinking the exact same way Judge Lyman is thinking. Because check this out. Oh my gosh, we're getting all of the things. Last night it was filed that Judge Lyman has filed a motion denying Leslie Sloan's lawsuit as mute. So what exactly does this mean? Does this mean that her entire motion to be dismissed has been denied, or that her lawsuit is denied, or anything like that? No. Yes and no, kind of. Meaning the court didn't decide whether or not it was right or wrong. Because Stephanie Jones originally filed her motion to get dismissed, but now the Wayfarer parties and Jennifer Abel, they filed their amended counterclaims to that. What the judge and what the court essentially is saying is, I'm denying your old motion, not because it's wrong, but because we have this now, and because that thing that you were previously claiming, it doesn't exist anymore because now we have all of this other stuff. So basically Stephanie's original motion, yes, it was like sort of wiped off the table. It was kind of denied, but now she can file a new motion to dismiss. So now, knowing her, she's going to file a new motion to dismiss to the amended complaints, which they just filed. And it's kind of like the judge is saying, you know what? You tried your best the first time, but they came back with something. So here you go, start again. The playing field has literally changed because now look at what we know. OMG, I know that was a lot. Oh my gosh, I didn't think it would actually take an hour and a half. Oh, I'm thirsty. But there are 80 pages counterclaims. We didn't even get to the Judd Wallace one, which I'm very interested in reading, but I guess I'll get to that in the next episode. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think Stephanie Jones is going to come back, have a little clap back? She's going to re-amend the amended. I don't think anyone's going to get away at this point. I don't want anyone to get dismissed. I think it's too big. I think the web of lies and deceit and this whole colluding in corporate circle goes beyond Taylor Swift. I think it goes to Travis Kelce. I think it goes to Hugh Jackman. I think it goes to all of the people. You know, I think they're all kind of in it together to own another franchise, get this other big company to give Blake Lively a little something to have of her own. And they walked on the wrong people. You know, they literally thought these guys are puppy dogs. They're nobodies. They're nothing. They're going to go away. I am the big man and I can squash them like a little bug. And that's not what's happening. And I'm very thankful for that. I am so shocked and surprised that people are still working with Leslie Sloan and Stephanie Jones. I think it's, what kind of person are you if these are the people that you're keeping in your circle? I mean, it's absolutely awful. But yeah, anyway, that's it. What do you guys think? I really want you to drop your comments. I'm not even sure if anyone's with me anymore. I could just be talking to nobody because that was so much. That was so much, guys. But here it is. I mean, we're getting to the meat and potatoes of it. And I think once finally the judge puts his foot down and denies everyone's motion to dismiss, we'll be able to get moving on this. You know, this whole sham lawsuit came as a surprise to everyone. It's so insane. But yeah. Anyway, well, I hope you're having the best day. I usually like to end with something inspiring or positive or something, and I don't know. What can I say? Sometimes say nothing. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Oh my gosh, what was that? Listen, bitch, card deck. And it says, your worth is not tied to your productivity. Oh my gosh, did I have to hear that today? Your worth is not tied to your productivity. I'm not going to speak anything on that. I'm going to let that resonate and marinate with y'all. But your worth is not tied to your productivity. Let's all remember that and try to have some time just to be human beings. That's all I'm going to say about it. Okay? Thank you so much. I hope you're having the best day. Get some rest this weekend. Do something fun. Celebrate you. I love you. Have the best day. Bye. Talk to you soon.